We about ready to go? Hey, Nance.
This is kind of a surprise to you. I was talking.
Mayor, we're ready when you are.
Good. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the study session meeting on May 8th, 2024 to order. City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Lamb?
Here?
Councilmember Gregory? Councilmember Gutierrez?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ross? Here. Mayor Carnavale?
Here. Are there any changes to the study session agenda?
I have no changes, Mayor.
Okay. Will the City Clerk please read?
Public comment is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are within the City Council's jurisdiction but not on the agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The Mayor may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment or request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If you are a member of the public and wish to address the City Council, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and submit it to the City Clerk. You will be called upon at the appropriate time. If you have materials or other items to present to the members of the City Council, please do not approach them. All materials shall be presented to the City Clerk for distribution. Mayor, I did not receive any requests to speak forms, but if you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on items not on the agenda, please raise your hand. And I see none, Mayor.
Thank you. Public opinion polling findings. Mr. City Manager, we have a staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is the results of some public opinion polling that was done in follow-up to the discussion we had back in January when you received the report from the Resident Study Committee examining needs in the city and the discussion of a possible ballot measure resulting from that. We then contracted with FM3, who we've used before, to gauge opinion in the community. Richard Bernard is here to present the results of that. You've met Richard before. I think most recently he spoke at our strategic planning session about a year and a half ago. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Richard.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff. Thank you for inviting me to present the results of your voter survey. We conducted the survey between March 20th and the 26th of this year, so relatively fresh data. It was a dual mode survey, so a random portion of the respondents took the survey online and a random portion took the survey on the phone. In fact, 48% took it on telephone and 52% did it online. We interviewed a random sample of 433 registered voters. Sorry? Oh, all right, it's me, not the technology. Sorry about that. I'll speak more clearly into the mic. Sorry about that. Sure. We interviewed a random sample of 433 Cathedral City registered voters who are likely to vote in a November 2024 election based on their past voter history or if they've recently registered to vote. For the full sample, the margin of error is plus or minus 4.9%. In some cases, we took a random half the sample, asked them some questions, and another random half some other questions because we had a very long list of potential priorities for the funding, as well as we wanted to test different kind of framing. I have seen the change of a word or two resulting in a 10-15 point swing in terms of a level of support. So we wanted to really just focus in on the priorities of your voters. We contacted folks by telephone, email, and text. And we've had the privilege to work for the city over a fair number of surveys. And where appropriate, we have tracking data so that you could see changes or similarities over time. We provided the survey in English and Spanish. And if you're very quick on math and notice something doesn't quite equal 100%, I blame that entirely on rounding error. I want to start by giving you a sense of the mood of the electorate and then sort of a conceptual frame as to whether they think you have a need for additional funds. We asked in the beginning of the survey whether they thought things in the city were headed in the right direction or if they felt that things were pretty seriously headed on the wrong track. We've asked this question in previous surveys so you could see the various results over time. The blue bar is the right direction, the orange is the wrong track, and the gray are the folks who were undecided. They weren't sure if it was right direction, wrong track, or they didn't know enough about what was going on in the city to offer an opinion. And you could see in the most current survey, 54%, a little more than half, think things are headed in the right direction. It's almost a 2-to-1 ratio of right direction to wrong track. At a time in which cost of living is perceived to be at the highest it was last year or so, 40-year high, now it's gone down, but the prices have not. So the cost of living, the cost of housing, the perception of homelessness and property crimes, your numbers comparatively to most communities are very good. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Read the whole question, but you refer to it as generally headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Or pretty seriously off. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big scale. I mean, that's, one's kind of happy and one's definitely not equal in happiness.
Right.
Why do you do that?
Well, partly we tracked it from previous questions that we've asked before so that we could have apples to apples comparison. In decades ago, when things such as in 2008, when there was the crash in 2009, there was more of an extreme kind of attitude. And so we just want to sort of be consistent so I can comparatively tell you today that your numbers are really good relative to most communities. And in fact, because we have tracking data over the last couple of years, I have seen cities drop 20 to 25 points in just a short period of time for the reasons that I had cited, sort of the cost of living, much of which is out of your control, but nonetheless, it's just a mood of the city.
So while that we're really awesome, but I do feel that that's a skewed question. That one's kind of a knock it out of the park easily, and the other one is, do you even want to play that?
Truth be told, we have since changed it in most circumstances to just things are headed in the wrong direction. But because I'm interested in showing you comparative data, we kept it consistent to previous work. If it is at the desire of the council, if we're fortunate to ever work with you again, I am more than happy to change the question, but then I couldn't give you comparative data. And I guess the point here is that unlike many of the cities that I've had to present to, and I present to a lot of cities, I have good news for you. So if the extreme was the case, your numbers would be way higher. And they were, in 2016, they were 26%, but I'm seeing cities that are underwater now. In other words, there's 50-60% are saying wrong track, and much more modest numbers saying right direction. So I hear you. I don't disagree with you, but I also have good news for you. So take it for what that is. Thank you for that. We also asked a conceptual question. Do they even think that there's a need for additional funds? Does the city need additional funds to provide the level of city services that Cathedral City residents need and want? And we offered them the option of great need, which is the dark blue, some need, which is the bright blue, and I've aggregated the total great and some need on the right-hand side. The dull orange and the bright orange are a little or no real need, and I've aggregated that on the right-hand side, and the gray are the folks who said they just didn't know enough to offer an opinion. So what's also striking to me, in spite of the fact that you have a 1-cent sales tax, the numbers continue to be fairly high in terms of perception of need. If these numbers were lower, now we're not asking them at this point, how are you going to get the money? So for some people, they may naively think, oh, the state will just give them some more money, or the county. But we sort of know the condition of the finances in Sacramento, so we know that's not going to happen anytime soon. So, but people are clearly identify that there are some needs. So we now introduce I'll call it a hypothetical ballot question. As you know, it's ultimately at the discretion of council as to what the question is and if you choose to move forward. So I'm not trying to get ahead of you, but my charge was to test something. So what I did was I used our knowledge of your past research, of which we have a fair amount, and also worked pretty closely with your city staff to help us identify what the council priorities are. And a combination of framing on what I know scores well in your community and also some of your priorities. We presented here this ballot, 75-word ballot title and summary. As you know, this is a 50+1 general purpose measure. At the end of the day, it's just going to go into the general fund and it will be at the discretion of the council as to how you see it appropriately to spend. At best, we can just provide illustrative examples of where the money could go, but we took into account your interest about, we saw your priorities, the ambulance and roads as being two of your 4 major priorities and incorporated in with that as well. We read this to them if they were on the phone, and if they were online, they read it, and we said if there were an election today, would you vote yes in favor or no to oppose? If they said they would vote yes in favor, we asked them, is that definitely or probably, because we want to know the intensity of support, i.e. the percentage of people who say definitely yes. If they said no, we asked them, is that definitely or probably no, because we want to know the intensity of the opposition, that is the percent who say definitely no. If they were undecided, we pushed them a little. We said, well, would you lean yes or would you lean no? If they said they'd lean yes, we put them in the yes camp, no in the no camp. And for this particular measure, 5% said, I still don't know, I need to learn more, I'm undecided. So on the initial vote for a 50+1 measure, 64% say yes, 31% say no, 5% say undecided. You'll see the margin of error is 4.9. So let's say for simple math, let's say 5%. If I were to be very conservative and look at just the folks who are willing at first blush to say yes, those definitely and probably yes, if I use 5 on that 61%, on the high end it will be 66%, and on the low end it will be 56%, above the margin of error of the 50+1, and certainly looking like it could be viable. I thought you might be interested in where the support was, and so you can see in front of you the various council districts, the 5 of them. I took everyone who said definitely, probably, or lean yes on the initial vote, and I made them blue. That blue bar is total yes. I took everyone who said definitely, or probably, or lean no, and made them orange, and that orange bar is a total no, and the gray are those pure undecided. The districts align at the bottom. And the percentages below are the percentages that we anticipate they will make up of a likely November 2024 electorate. So the largest percentage of voters will come from districts 3 and 5, and the smallest will be coming from districts 1 and 2. And you could see across the board, there is fairly strong support for the sales tax, the 1 cent sales tax measure, though there are variations across, but primarily, some of it is explained by the undecided. So telling them why they need this is probably an important element of being successful. Well, it is an important element, not probably. You may recall, I showed you a slide a couple of minutes ago about whether they perceive there's a need for additional funds by the city to provide the level of city services that residents need and want. In this case, if people said great or some need, there's a strong level of support. So understanding the need is a big determinant of level of support. If they think there's a little or no real need, it's flipped. It's a 2-to-1, a little bit more than a 2-to-1 ratio of no to yes. So information is important. And then we presented in a random fashion a list of potential uses of the funds. And we said, regardless of whether you support this measure or not, I'm going to mention some provisions and uses of the funds. How important would it be to include these items in the measure we've been discussing? That dark blue is extremely important. The mid-color blue is very important. I've aggregated the extremely and very important on the right-hand side, and I've ranked it as such. The dullest of blues is somewhat important, and that small sliver of orange are the folks who said not too important or they didn't know. Presumably, if they don't know, it can't be that important. And I have a list of 34 items that we tested 4 of them reached the 90s in terms of extremely or very important, 11 in the 80s, and 11 in the 70s. So if I could just step away for a moment from the sales tax to tell you, there are some cities I present to them, and their numbers are in the 50s, maybe 60s, and I've got 1 or 2 things that are of high priority, either extremely or very to their residents. In cities in which the council is very in tune with the community, I get results like this, or they get results like this. In other words, there are a number of items that score very high in terms of priority, which suggests to me that the council and voters are in sync. You know your community. I don't always get to say that, so I'm going to say that now. And then the other item I wanted to say is, regardless of whether you move forward or not with a sales tax, this list is really invaluable in terms of your budget deliberations, because it's an opportunity for you to see what the priorities of your community are. Now, you obviously are going to make good social and public policy, but how you communicate them may be helped by the list of items here. That being said,
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So do you also see that it's really skewed socioeconomically? That are
yeah.
more well-to-do areas were really, really high numbers. And I don't think any of the numbers are bad, but it just show that districts 1 and 2 came in, the lowest. And although District 1 does have one quite affluent area, District 2 not so much. That's
Right.
my district. And I can see where, that would make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I can answer it this way. So I've been doing this for more than 21 years, and I've done a lot of sales taxes over my time. And typically, I will ask in the demographics household income, because rightly so, some people will argue that a sales tax is a regressive tax. And what I find in every single circumstance, I cannot think of one time where that was not the case, less affluent households are equally, if not more likely to support a sales tax than more affluent households, because they see themselves as the recipient of many of these potential services. So, for example, I know there's a strong desire in your community to have a park and rec programs, expansive ones for kids, right? So if I have a family of 4, and my partner and I work, and we have 2 kids, and I'd like my kids to have experiences with other kids and have fun, and I can't afford private lessons or private activities, they understand this is an opportunity to get low fees or no fee activities throughout the year. So,
Thanks. I think you're spot on. That's right. Thank you.
all right. So among the items, and there are a number of pages of which this is public, so everyone has access to, the lead items are clearly public safety, without a doubt. And what's striking to me is, I understand, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a real interest in the council to have some kind of ambulance service of some sort. And that scores very high, among the highest things. So it's paramedics, it's EMTs, it's firefighters score high. And also, you'll see partly halfway down, repairing neighborhood streets and potholes is also another item that scores well. And then the last, I don't want to minimize preparing for, responding to, recovering from rainstorms and other natural disasters. I'm mindful of Hillary, as well as the various rainstorms that you've had over the years that have really impacted the valley, and particularly parts of your community, and protecting Cathedral's long-term financial stability. Obviously, this can't solely be about a public safety, because then it becomes a 2/3 measure, much more daunting, and also restricts how you can spend the money and relative to your priorities. 2 other things I'd like to point out, other than when you go down this list, you'll notice homelessness scores quite well, quite strongly, as well as helping prevent property crimes. These seem to be the 4 issues: cost of living, cost of housing, property crimes, and homelessness, depending on the community, different rank orders, the major issues of concern in Southern California right now, and maybe across California. I do want to point out, maintaining city services scored 45% extremely important and 81% extremely or very important. I'm going to drop down to the next slide where improving city services was 3474. It was a differential on the extremely important of 11 points and 7 points, on extremely and 11 points, 7 points on extremely or very. The point is people are happy here and they want to focus on mostly maintaining services. It doesn't mean that they don't want improvements, but the lead is maintaining. In well-run cities, I see this time and time again, so something for you to just understand. And I know costs of all these services keep going up, and you're trying to just keep up, and the growth of folks moving in on a daily basis sort of really taxes a lot of communities, so I appreciate that. So the last series of slides I want to show you are some educational statements. As you know, you've been through this before, that the city can't advocate, but they can educate, and certainly on your time you can do whatever you want, as long as you don't use any city resources. And so we gave them a series of statements and we randomized it, and we asked them after each one, tell me if it would make you more inclined to vote yes on the measure. The dark blue is much more inclined, the bright blue is somewhat more inclined, and I've aggregated the total more inclined on the right-hand side. The words in the parentheses, such as response times, streets, accountability, are just the themes for us. We did not read it to them, but I'm certain you don't want me to sit here and read 6 messages, so I'll leave that to you. But suffice it to say, many of your priorities were the top scoring messages, and these are very high numbers. In other words, you have a really good story to tell that people are receptive to. Last year alone, approximately 77% of the calls to your fire department were related to medical emergencies. Nicely fits with one of your priorities. Streets, prior to this year's rainy season, an independent engineering rated, this is your pavement management report, 2/3 of your streets are in fair, poor, or very poor condition. And so it's cheaper to fix them now than waiting down the road. So, and obviously accountability is important anywhere. It's not the lead. People don't vote for a measure because there's accountability, but they will vote against a measure if there isn't accountability. And we tested several other messages that scored well, including property crimes, which seems to be very much a concern. And so with that, I would be happy to answer any other questions.
Tell us, how was this survey conducted? Was it a phone call? Was it online? Was it a text? How was it conducted?
Sure. I'll get back to the original methodology slide. So we contacted folks by telephone, email, and text. So what we do is we work with a sample vendor that regularly goes into, works with the Riverside County election registrar. We have all the list of your registered voters. We take a random sample of folks who, based on their past voter history, are likely to vote in November 2024, because that's the election you're interested in. And then we randomly, we get their we have telephone numbers and emails to most of them. And so we randomly take a section of folks and send emails to them, and then also follow up with some texts, and then another balance of them, the random other portion, will have telephone calls. So, and about close to half and half we did telephones and online surveys.
Now, my other question is,
Yep.
were there any of the people that were surveyed, were they Spanish speaking or?
Yes.
Were any surveys conducted
Yeah.
in Spanish?
Again, I'm happy to report 9% of the respondents opted to take it in Spanish. We offered it both online and on the phone. I know that's super important for you. I remember having the same conversation years ago. We're super mindful of it. And while in the past we haven't done many surveys online, we're more and more offering that as an option as more and more of the Latino community who opt to speak in Spanish are willing to do it. In the early days when we tried to put these surveys online, 1 or 2 people would do it, and it was like an expense to the city. Now more and more are doing it, so we offer it in the same ways we would offer it to folks who choose to take the survey in English.
Oh, great. My last question. Now, these people that were surveyed in Spanish or bilingual, Now, what was the inclination, if you happen to have kept that, as to supporting this measure?
Among Latinos?
Yes.
I may have that, if you just bear with me for 1 second. And if I don't, it means there wasn't a lot of difference between, usually I have it if there was interesting differences by self-identified race and ethnicity. I do not have them, suggesting to me that support was similar across whether someone self-identified as Latino or Hispanic, or white, or African American or Asian.
Okay. And my last question, was there a difference if in gender, who was supporting it or not?
Again, if I have it, there was, and if I don't have it, there wasn't. Hold on 1 second, please. No, I could tell you, if you're younger, you're a little bit more likely to support this. Younger being 18 to 49, so I guess it's relative. You're more likely to support it. And I had mentioned before about household income. Statistically, no difference between less affluent households and more affluent households. And the other thing I looked at, because I thought it was important, was turnout model. It was a very poor turnout, as you can remember, in the March election. It's primary, and there wasn't a lot of competition on the presidential level. It was pretty much decided. So we looked at turnout, and regardless of whether there's a low or high turnout, support is pretty consistent across the board. So I think that's important.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So I have this desire to nerd out on this, and I'm going to really try to pull myself back in.
Go for it.
But when you're asking texters and emailers
Yep.
and telephoners,
Yep.
those kind of sway a different age demographic. So texters, and I'm not going to, I text and I'm
Yep.
old, but somehow in my mind, I see texters as younger and phone people. I don't have a telephone in my home.
Right. So everyone would assume the same thing. In actuality, we start on emails right away. That's where we start. And it's the folks who are 50 plus who fill their quotas super early. And counterintuitively, we're getting the younger people a little bit on the text, but mostly on the phone, which is amazing to me. Like I still, like 4 years into this, I am still shocked. Every call center.
Home phone? I mean,
No,
you're
no,
not
no, no,
talking-
no,
you-
no.
No,
Most
okay,
of
you're
the
not-
people, no, most
All
of the
right.
people respond. Okay, I'll tell you, of the people who took the survey on the phone, 72% were on a cell phone.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
That makes me feel a little bit
Landline,
better.
you
I
know.
thought that's really going to skew it if you're doing
Yeah,
landlines,
that's
you know.
right. If you only had a survey that was landline, I wouldn't trust it as far as I could throw it. I happen to have a landline, and my dad, who's 95, has a landline. I don't know many other people who do, so I totally get it.
Hopefully you have yours so he can call you.
That's exactly why I have it.
So when you shared the questions with us about ambulance,
Yeah.
and especially the ambulance, the fire and ambulance service, I heard it, and please correct me if I'm mistaken,
Yeah.
that you were trying to get an idea if people were happy with their services now. But in fact, we wanted to make a little change in our ambulance services.
So we didn't specifically ask them, how happy are you with the ambulance services? We asked, and the question I have in front, and I believe it will be on your screen too, is regardless of how you feel about the measure, please tell me how important it is to you personally that each provision or use of the funds is included in the measure. And so I would listen to this and say, all right, maybe I don't want to support the tax, or maybe I do, but my priority would be for you to maintain 911 medical, ambulance, fire, police response. Now, if that means that in order to maintain it, you're going to up the quality by having this ambulance service, improving is not going to score. I'm just telling you, improving, you saw the numbers. They like what they have.
Yeah.
So if it means that the ambulance is going to come quicker than it did before, who's going to complain
Yeah, I'm
about
not trying
that?
to talk anybody out of anything,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Well, I am trying, if some people I might want to talk out.
Yeah.
These folks, not so much.
Very
huh?
few people oppose that. I think that's a pretty winning concept.
Do you vary your questions based on socioeconomics?
No,
Not at all.
everything-
100% the same.
everything's-
That's what I thought I heard from you.
Yep.
And then my last question is, how does this affect, no, I think you've already answered that question. I'm done with ya. Thank
All
you.
right. Did you feel like you nerded out?
I think so.
Okay, good.
But I know where you live, so, I know you've got a phone, so.
I do. I
could
have both
call
a
you
land
anytime,
and
right?
cell, yes.
Any members of the public like to speak?
Mayor, I did not receive any request to speak forms, but if you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on this item, please raise your hand. I see none.
Richard, thank you once again.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate
Very
it.
informative. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. This is for presentation only. For discussion and direction, there is no formal action required. Item B, Code Compliance Division Updates. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Yes, this is a follow-up to several discussions that we've had over the last few months about our code enforcement services. And one thing that the staff has done is work diligently to improve their processes and make sure that all officers are handling things in a consistent manner. They've also been working with our legal department to make sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to where do we go after the first steps don't work. On our enforcement. So Justin Gardner is your code enforcement manager. He's going to provide some updates on some cases, the types of cases they get, their processes. Andy Firestein's also here. He's got a piece of this because there are certain items that are part of bigger studies, the parking in neighborhoods and the vacant property registry and things like that. We're going to touch on those just to let you know that we heard you on those and working on those, and Andy will fill in some of those as well. So go ahead, Justin.
Excellent.
Thank you, Charlie. Mayor Pro Tem, Council, thank you for your time and having me back to speak. So before we get too far into the weeds here, I'd like to do a quick reintroduction of your code compliance team. We currently have a team of 8, and we are recruiting right now. We're in interview process to backfill a vacant position to bring us to a total of 9 staff in the division. I have the privilege to lead the division. I've been your code compliance manager since the day of Tropical Storm Hillary. That was my first day of work, so fat right into the fire. And it's been a blast ever since. I fully appreciate being here and part of this city. I have a vested interest in the city. I went to Cathedral City High School. I grew up in the city. My parents still live here, and my stepson goes to Landau Elementary. So the city is near and dear to me. Prior to coming here, I did have a background in code compliance. I was the senior administration officer at the county of Riverside. I'm one of the first 5 individuals to earn a higher education degree through Santiago Canyon College in code enforcement and compliance, and was subsequently invited to come back as an adjunct professor to teach the younger code officers coming up in the in the industry. I am also an elected member of the board of directors for the California State Association of Code Officers, and I am on my 2nd term. I've led the Officer Safety Committee, as well as the Elections Committee, Conference Committee, and a few others. My staff is highly trained and motivated. I have 1 staff member who has over 20 years of experience in code compliance, actually here with the city. 3 of my staff members currently hold bachelor's degrees. 2 of them are working on their master's, and I have 1 other staff member working on their bachelor's degree. I have several staff members who are either currently certified code enforcement officers through the state, myself included, and I have 1 more code officer who we're currently putting through the academy to become certified. Quick overview of some of the stuff that we're going to touch on today: operational changes in training, workload, workflow, and current and emerging issues. Thank you, ma'am. So some of the big changes that we've seen recently or since my joining the city, under the operations side, we've adjusted our hours for our code compliance officers to more greatly impact the needs of our citizens. I do not believe that code enforcement officers were very functional on Christmas morning. There was no need for them to be out writing citations to people on Christmas morning and things of that nature. We updated our uniforms to a more kinder, softer, gentler uniform opposed to the all-black, militaristic-looking uniforms. We've updated their gears and equipment, and we've also begun developing standards of operating procedure, also known as SOPs, and providing them with go-bys or checklists or cheat sheets. We had a huge reduction of redundant forms that were being used, forms that were being redeveloped over the years, forgotten, redeveloped again. We've cleaned house there. We have real-time asset tracking, and all of the iPads issued to the code officers now can be seen in real time from my office, and we've created essentially our own dispatching center through my office and my administrative assistant so that we can see them in the field, and in case there's an officer safety issue, if the only thing they can get out on the radio is, at least we know where they are. And then we've made some major updates in our GoGov, our report writing system as well, to send out automated messages to reporting parties, as well as help me answer the surveys that are filled out from our citizens. And I've made it a point to really engage with our citizens when they fill out those surveys. I get to review all of them, and I respond to a good majority of them. For training, we've upped our training here at the department tenfold. SB 296 was passed last year. It's the Code Enforcement Officer Safety Bill, and it mandates that jurisdictions provide officer safety training to their code enforcement officers. So through that, we've done things like active violence emergency response training, also known as AVERT. We've had Sabre International come out with their certified instructors to teach OC spray training, first aid CPR, stop the bleed, verbal de-escalation, and then also a certified situational awareness specialist course. So here's some data on new complaints or requests. The word complaint and request can be used interchangeably. In our report writing system, it comes up as a request, but essentially it is a citizen complaint. Since April of 23 to April of 24, we had roughly 2,241 total complaints come into our GoGov system. We average about 160 to 200 new complaints per month. Right now, we're seeing a trend for cannabis odor complaints. We've had a downtick in fewer complaints for vendors. However, we have had an uptick in complaints on solid waste containers. The top 5 complaints over the last 12 months there are other code issues, which these are going to be a lot of your property maintenance issues, visual blight, excessive outdoor storage, 481 vendor issues, 293 inoperable vehicles in public right-of-way, 280 landscape not maintained, 270, parking on landscape, 175, with the 6th most complaint of garbage containers at 160, majority single source complaint initiated. So responsiveness, how code enforcement cases are reported. I've done a sample simply through the day that I started with the city until the day that this slideshow was created. 49% of those come from neighbors. 35% are opened proactively by code officers. The other 16% are reported by our sister agencies, fire, police, city staff, so on. We do have a priority matrix response time and a memorandum that predated my time that explained what type of code cases were what type of priority. Our most egregious cases, or priority ones, require an immediate response, but as practical. And I want to point out the point of as practical because code enforcement officers or code compliance officers, unfortunately, are not first responders. There's nothing in code compliance that's happening right now that can't be fixed tomorrow. You know, if a fire is happening, you want the fire department out there right now because you need to put the fire out, right? But we're in the long game. Code compliance typically plays the long game. So our priority ones, examples of those are defined as life and safety, or has a serious potential for injury to persons or property, unpermitted structures or garage conversions, substandard housing, sudden structural failure or heavy damage, unsecured or abandoned structures, or requests from police and fire. Priority 2, which require a 10-day or less response time, would be visual blight, inoperative vehicles, unmaintained landscape, parking on landscape, outdoor storage, illegal dumping. And some examples of priority 3, which is a 15-day or less response time, would be routine complaints such as trash receptacles still out after pickup, signage, other parking-related issues, business license issues, and garage sales. Most of our cases from 8/23 to 4/24 were able to close in 0 to 1 weeks, with the vast majority of those being our vendor enforcement or other transitory offenses that were immediately rectified. So when code officers go out to something that day and are able to rectify it right then, they can close it out in the system, and that bumps the numbers up quite drastically. 2 to 3 weeks is most of our priority 2 cases are getting resolved within 2 to 3 weeks. And then those 14-plus week cases are the ones that compliance is hard to gain from the offender. So caseload by officer, right now, we're trying to hit that sweet spot of about 200 cases per officer. Some officers carry a little bit of a higher caseload than others. In particular, I'd like to point out Officer Martinez, who carries a caseload of 253. Officer Martinez has been instrumental in working in the Dream Homes area, and especially in regard to the new park coming up. I was asked to come out to the groundbreaking of the park, which I was super grateful for. And the keynote speaker, John Corella, did give a shout out to me as part of that to help get that cleaned up. And I would like to redirect that comment for me back to Officer Martinez, because she was instrumental in getting all of that cleaned up and doing such a great job in that area. And then Officer X is pending hire. He currently has 0, but we'll quickly change that as soon as he signs the contracts to come be part of the city. And then you can see here on that diagram that a majority of their cases, regardless of who has them, are going to be property maintenance type issues. Progress is being made. In August of 23, when I first started, there were approximately 1,500 plus cases that were in our report writing system. As of April 24, there are now 975 approximately. Over 500 cases were worked and cleared to close within an 8-month period. The initial goal that I set when I hit the ground was that within 6 months, I would like to see us at 1,000 cases. I am happy to say that this was exceeded. The demographic there the graphic there shows a continued downturn in open and closed cases month to month. We do contract and use Data Ticket. They are pretty much industry standard. There are several others out there, but I have familiarity with Data Ticket. I use them exclusively at the county as well. We use them to do all of the back end stuff with our administrative citations. They will act as a collection agency, and they also will reach out to the Franchise Tax Board if we have certain information to provide to them in regards to collections, and they also supply us hearing officers at our administrative hearings. In that snippet of time, 48 administrative citations were generated. I'd like to further on that we are not in the business of making money. We're not out there just to write everybody citations. Code compliance is a unique animal, and it's mostly based in education, training, and just educating property owners that there are ordinances and municipal codes that govern what they can and can't do with their properties. A lot of property owners are under the idea that the American dream, this is my land, I'll do what I want with it. Yes, but get a permit first. 10 citations were appealed out of that 48, but they were upheld. 2 citations were forwarded to the Franchise Tax Board. Why is that such a low number? Because we can't forward it to the Franchise Tax Board unless we have certain information such as a social security number to attach to that citation. If we're unable to gain that information, or if Data Ticket's unable to obtain that information, then they have to go the traditional collection route and not hit the FTB. We wrote $119,000 worth of citations, $17,000 of late fees and charges attached to that. So far, we've collected $42,000 of that with an outstanding balance of $94,000 still owed to the city for upheld citations. Getting work done. Here's a case example. We're going to go through a couple before and after here. I think I got 4 or 5 in the slideshow. This was a homeless encampment that was fairly close to City Hall here, as well as bordering the city of Rancho Mirage. It began to garner a lot of complaints from our citizens as well as citizens from our adjacent city. This one was worked cooperatively with a lot of help from the police department. The homeless liaison team went with our code officers on multiple occasions to the property, even sent up the drone to give verbal warnings because the resident, if you will, of this encampment advised that if we're going to come back to bring body bags, because that's how we're all leaving. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but we ended up being successful, as you can see on the picture on the right. That is the same angle, same shot after we got it all cleaned up. But again, a big shout out to the police department and Chief Crum and the homeless team for assisting us on this one. This one's not as intense and not as fun as being threatened with body bags, but another good example of the hard work that my code officers are out there doing, educating property owners to let them know that yes, it is in fact a municipal code violation to have a dead lawn. Train them on what types of lawn coverage they can have, including the water drought resistance, and then here we are with the after. Another case that was recently resolved, actually on May 7th. Property had Junk, trash, and debris stored all throughout on the left-hand side. After some education from the code officer and 2 visits, the property owner decided to comply, removed the decorations off of the front of the home, moved the trash cans and all of the debris, and tidied right up. Here's one of our more complex cases. This one took us quite a while to resolve. The property owner was a little bit of a hoarder and then passed away. So the home was in a limbo for some time. These are the type of cases that end up eating up a lot of staff time and become a little bit more difficult to resolve, but are pretty important because there was harborage of rodents and insects. There was feces inside the home. Whether it was animal or human is not known, but very deplorable conditions, and we were able to go in there and get it completely cleaned out. Here's another example of a before and after. I believe this came out of the Dream Homes. This was one of Officer Martinez's cases. You can see on the left there was unkept landscaping, dead trees, unpermitted fencing, and the home was in poor condition. After working with the property owner, we were able to get this up to standard. Then in the case of hoarding here, this is close to one of our parks and in direct view of where our children would play and hang out. This property, the garage looked like it puked out onto the sidewalk. But they had a little bit of a hoarding issue there. We worked with the property owner's spouse. They identified that the co-owner did have a little bit of an issue with hoarding, but through education and giving them pamphlets and guiding them, they were able to get the resources they needed as well to make a huge impact and clean all of that out. That's right, we get it done. But how? Through our standards of operating procedure and go-bys. Here is one of the examples. I've created a go-by checklist for our code staff. Prior to my arrival, I noticed that they didn't have anything that they could refer to make their jobs a little bit easier. So we've condensed it now into hopefully a 9-step process. This is not cookie cutter. It does not work for every single case. Every single code compliance case is unique. Every property owner is unique. Every issue is unique. So there are going to be some times that we jump around on this list, but at least this is a good stepping stone for the code officers to work through to tell what's next in the process. So we'll receive a request. First and foremost, we're going to go out and see if it even is an actual code compliance violation. Excuse me. First, we're going to see if it's even an actual code compliance violation or a municipal code violation, if it's actually even within our city. Sometimes we go out to properties, the issue is no longer there, or it fixed itself, resolved before our arrival, close out the case, move on. If we do verify that a code case is there, then we'll open the case. The requests were being closed, and an email was being sent out to the reporting party with language in it that said the request was closed, but a code case is open. That generated a lot of negative responses to surveys because the citizens thought that we were closing their issue and not working on it. So we've made, again, those big updates in our report writing system. Requests now remain open through the life of the code case until the code case is resolved. And then now, as we do major updates in the case, depending on the action type selected in the report writing system, an automated email will go out to the reporting party, keeping them abreast of where we're at in the case. So before, a reporting party would just call in or report in and would hear nothing from us and just hope to see resolution. Now they're getting automated updates as we go through. If it's elevated enforcement, if it was unfounded, if what we're doing, it'll send kind of a generic email just saying, hey, this is where we're at in the process. So we're hoping that that communication will help relieve some of maybe the negative survey responses. In most all of our actions that we do, we give our citizens an opportunity to appeal it. There is language in all of our forms, including our administrative citations and our notices and orders, that direct them that they have X amount of days to appeal if they feel that maybe the case was opened in error or they disagreed with it. They can appeal our administrative citations, notice and order to abates, and our vehicle abatement forms. All of our appeals are scheduled through Data Ticket since they control all of the tickets anyways, and a hearing officer is provided by Data Ticket as part of their services and contract. All of our appeal hearings are currently conducted digitally through Zoom, and this has all been already pre-approved. Working with Eric and his team, we've delved into our legal toolbox to see exactly what we have at our disposal and how to get there. His team has worked exhaustively with me and putting up with all of my phone calls and emails and bugging them. And we now have go-bys and packets and explanations. They sent me a nice little thing about that thick that I've now passed on to my officers in their smart books so they can refer to it. So if they're going through their 9-step checklist and they get down to step 9 and they realize that, hey, we need to elevate this case to a legal action because obviously the property owner's not complying, they now have a go-by to look at what services are offered from the attorney's office to select the best for that case. Some of those options are administrative abatements or summary abatements. Summary abatements we sometimes say as emergency abatements. Civil injunctions or receiverships, both costly. Criminal enforcement, we currently have 3 or 4 that are being prosecuted criminally right now, and then collections, fines, and penalties through data ticket, traditional collection agency methods, or the franchise tax board. On the issues. Current and emerging issues, sidewalk vendors, shopping cart enforcement, cannabis enforcement, vacant buildings, residential parking, and mobile home park administration and enforcement. You'll probably recognize that lot, council member. Thank you for the heads up yesterday. We were able to go out there and successfully remove all 3 vendors.
Great, thank you.
So illegal sidewalk vending began with the rollout of a newly adopted ordinance in 2023. We did a huge educational campaign for several months prior to increasing any type of enforcement action. We held a vendor expo at the Panorama Park to encourage compliance. Although we didn't get a lot of sidewalk vendors at that event, we did get several individuals who were interested in starting MICOs, or micro enterprise home kitchens, and we were able to connect them with the County of Riverside Environmental Health, who came out to participate in our event, as well as the Small Business Administration. We did increase our efforts to protect public health and safety of the community by confiscating unapproved or unpermitted perishable food items to prevent our citizens from getting any type of foodborne illness. Vendor operations, however, are very labor intensive and do require full staff involvement due to officer safety concerns and the casework involved with the confiscation. So usually when we go out to do vendor enforcements, I've given the guidance to not go out solo because it is a hot button issue. And although we are there to protect public health and safety, some members of the public don't care and they don't agree with that. So we do roll out pretty heavy when we do this. So far, 90 contacts have been made from 10/23 until present, with the majority of those being now fixed immediately, where they no longer have anything there and they pack up and go. We have seen an increase that we contact one now and they jump on a cell phone, and within 15 minutes, all the rest disappear. So although we're not actually contacted them, I still consider that a win because they've packed up and left, which is the better of the 2 options than seeing us and having your stuff confiscated. Shopping cart enforcement, we did purchase a new flatbed trailer for impoundment operations. We worked cooperatively with Public Works, thank you Deanna, to develop an SOP for the trailer use, as well as Mike Walla from Fleet. All code officers are trailer safety trained. We found an OSHA approved trailer training online, and then we're going to double that down by taking hands-on trailer safety training with a member of the police department. Developed new fees associated with the costs of incurment for impoundment, and impoundment procedures are going to be labor intensive and also require multiple staff to complete safely, and we are going to go out on our first trial run tomorrow morning. Cannabis enforcement, there has been a recent uptick in nuisance odor complaints, more or less around one individual area. Limited programs in place for dispensary enforcement because a lot of our focus up to this date has been on CUP and licensing. We've worked with neighboring cities such as Palm Springs and Palm Desert and Desert Hot Springs to develop best practices. Our neighbors in Palm Springs have allowed us to come and do sit-alongs with their code staff that solely that's all they do is dispensary and cannabis enforcement. We've gone up and toured cannabis facilities and the cannabis team with Desert Hot Springs. And we've been coordinating and reviewing all of their ordinances and policies and procedures pertaining to all things cannabis and their recommendations. And there are recommendations we would like to make on our own ordinances. We would like to mirror some of the better practices that we have seen in some of these other cities. And we're still evaluating our potential ordinance updates and resources possibly needed. Solid waste containers, there has been a recent uptick in solid waste containers coming through our system. A lot of them are coming from either anonymous sources or a single source. There was a pilot program that took place in the Panorama Park area, and it had less than optimal results. We reviewed that at the last time I was at the podium. We did conduct a windshield survey of the Rio Vista and Cove neighborhoods, and most properties within the city are out of compliance regarding visible solid waste containers. And I would like to note the caveat of certain neighborhoods, particularly the Cove neighborhood, those homes were not created with this ordinance in mind. They don't have the ability to screen or shield their solid waste containers like other neighborhoods. We have developed new educational flyers and social media blasts and mailers. Thank you to our PIO, Ryan Hunt, and Deanna for helping us out with that. And we have distributed them throughout. During the pilot program, we actually got out and physically walked both sides, the north and south side of two of the streets there in Panorama, and physically taped on the educational flyers to every single visible trash container. So we've increased our communication strategy, again, continued partnerships and collaboration with the PIO, our webmaster, our IT team, and then our environmental and public work manager to create and distribute new content. We've created a lot of new educational flyers, both for sidewalk vending, for solid waste containers, and we're developing more as needed as we go. We've had an increase in personal response to citizen surveys submitted to the division. Like I said, if you submit one, I will read it and I will respond. We would like a couple new ideas. One, we would like to the creation of public service announcements videos led by code. So short snippet videos of common code violations, and have one of the code officers walk you through. I have one staff member who is chomping at the bit at this, would love to start doing it. We've tossed around some ideas, maybe calling it cracking the code. Like, good stuff. Cracking the code with Cathedral City Code. That's a lot of C's. But just other ways to engage with our citizens, to educate them, to promote the idea of code compliance and having some pride and ownership within your community. And then also we can mirror something along the lines of what our partner agency at the police department does, Coffee with the Cop. We're exploring the idea to also maybe do Coffee with Code, to give our citizens an opportunity to come and interface with us, talk, ask questions. We can have all of our educational flyers there for them as well. Pending any other questions from this portion of the slide, I'd then turn it over to Andy for the rest.
Right.
It's turned on here. I'm more curious, I'm so impressed with all the work that your department's doing, and I had no idea it's that large. So many facets to that. So a city of our size with residential, empty lots, and commercial, how many code compliance officers do you feel is necessary to do a stellar job and real comfortable? I mean, we're at 6 now, correct?
Correct.
So where do you think we should be at in a few years?
How many residents do we have?
We're about 56,000, I believe.
I'll do 50,000 code officers.
How many?
50,000.
Yeah.
That's a difficult question to ask because the target, if you will, adjusts, right? So if you were to ask me that 3 months ago, I would have said I need triple my staff because the sidewalk vendor issue is just overwhelming and it's eating up all of our time. I need triple the staff to handle everything. We've addressed the sidewalk issue. There's been a huge downturn in those requests. It worked, or is working, hopefully. So now we've freed up some time to go do some stuff. I'm never going to turn down staff or money. But if I could get 2 more officers, that would probably greatly increase our ability to address special needs missions or some of the stuff that even Andy's going to tap on here moving forward with the vacant building, mobile home park enforcement, and some of the other issues. But once we get this new hire, we're doing final interviews on the 14th. Hopefully we'll have another body on staff within the next month. And that should start hopefully alleviating some of the pressure on the current staff.
Excellent, thank you.
And I have a comment,
Councilmember?
but my screen, for some reason, I can't. Anyway. Mike,
there.
I think you've done a Herculean job, considering your first anniversary is
In a
just
few
coming.
months.
Yeah, in a few months. It's just coming up for August 20th. So thank you for all your hard work. I love the idea of cracking the code and doing a public service communication discussion. We've had great success with the emergency preparedness. I know myself and Mayor Pro Tem Ross and Councilman Gucci, we've all participated in these around the city. When you were talking about like the specific incidences and like, for instance, visual blight or, and many of those can be addressed through Public Works, finding out about illegal dumping and what the procedure is for bulky item pickup based on, BURTEC, and Desert Water Agency and their rebate program in terms of carp. So that's a whole big long story to say that our most recent event that we had was a discussion, and it was a community safety discussion at the community room here, and it was because of several incidences of break-ins and things happening in the Cove. But I know an information day with you and Public Works, to go over some of these kind of cases that could be solved with the help of Public Works, that would be brilliant, because that's a place to start. Because like you say, it's not one-to-one correspondence between a code officer and a homeowner and a resident, and that's probably what's needed, but it starts with education. So I don't know if there'd be willingness or time, but I think that would be another wonderful thing that we could empower our residents to help improve the look of Cathedral City. So thank you. That was a big, long-winded thing. No question.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks so much, and thanks for your presentation. It always ends up with too many questions here, but here we go.
Well, I'll stand by for more questions in case you have them. Thank you.
No, I have a,
Oh, you have a
I'm
question?
coming with
Oh,
questions
oh.
for you. Don't you leave now. So is data ticketing doing everything bilingually? So, I mean, if you're ticketing somebody, it's important that they understand why they're being ticketed?
All of our legal forms are in English. So if my code officer goes out there and writes a citation, it's in English. All of the language is in English, and it's submitted off to Data Ticket.
So if we thought about addressing that and, doing a blurb, a bilingual blurb that says find more information here or something so that everybody is
I can check.
equally enforced?
I can check in with Data Ticket. A lot of our stuff can be translated or is translated. Most of it are educational flyers and stuff that we create, but all of our legal forms currently, to my understanding, are in English.
One of our, in my opinion, one of our greatest assets is our diversity. So I certainly don't want to lose track of that. So you mentioned mobile home enforcement. Are you talking about ownership enforcement? Or are you talking about resident enforcement, or both?
Both.
And so ownership enforcement might be addressing Tramview's water or the quality of the streets. But you're also talking about, so tell me a little bit about what individual code enforcement would be for mobile home owners.
It would be equivalent to that of code enforcement actions on a property owner or a home. If you have excessive outdoor storage or you have junk, trash, and debris that's piled up, that's going to be something that we're going to end up addressing with the mobile home owner as well as the park itself.
So how do you do that on private property, inside a gated community?
It's going to be through Title 25 and through some things that actually Andy's going to touch on here in a couple more slides. But essentially, through 1985, or were you going to touch on
Yeah,
that?
I'll go check that out, I'll go read it.
The city had the opportunity to absorb jurisdiction of enforcement from HCD, and we did that back in 1985.
Right, but that's more like solar and roofing and things like that.
It's for everything. So if we write a citation, we could write it to the management company and then have them, through their CCNRs and through their agreements, go and
I see,
enforce
so
it as well.
they're held initially responsible.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. Okay. So I think 12 vendors per month isn't too bad. Good job. It could be better. I could be thinner. Okay. So what other efforts have you seen in cannabis? So you were talking about you went out and saw other groups and got an idea of what they were doing to lower, I guess, the smell?
Everything. So one thing that I've noticed is that in our ordinance, our teeth are not very sharp. There was a new resolution that was passed not long ago that upped the fines different from our fines for citizens, but they're still very low comparatively. For example, violations in the city of Palm Springs, first-time violation for certain things is $5,000. Ours is much lower than that. So City of Desert Hot Springs contracts with the complete cannabis team. That's all they do. They're not even code officers. They just have a full-on cannabis team. So we've just been kind of picking little ideas here and there from all these other industries that are doing this to try to build our plan.
Okay, so you also talked about going and putting, and I'm going to get the verbiage kind of wrong, but something like taping warnings or taping, here, these are out and this isn't as supposed to be. Can you use our citizens on patrol for that?
I would have to ask the chief of police.
Well, you know where he is, right?
I do.
Well, not at this moment, but.
I can tell you, though, that I do monitor our police radio daily because my people are out there doing stuff, and I got to give a shout out to those citizens on patrol because they are on that
Absolutely.
radio constantly.
And they save our city an incredible amount of money by not having, but because they volunteer their services. I mean, that's, and we should take advantage of that as much as they'll let us without abusing them. And then, where would you want to show, you talked about making videos, little snippet videos. Where would you show those? On the city's website? Want to put them on CCTV websites? What do you want to do?
I would default to our social media expert, Ryan Hunt, and leverage him for all of that.
Thanks,
Only
Justin.
something
Yeah,
more
no,
for you to
I think
do.
it would be all over social media, it would be, and this is continuing what we've already done to build on. But yeah, I think it would be good content for CCTV. These kind of short snippet videos that Justin's describing, typically social media is the most engaged audience for, content 30 seconds or less, if we can keep it kind of, but we want to go through a series of videos, kind of being a little bit more creative in the way that we advertise it, that will go over all of the common code violations that we're facing. So just a way to kind of help Justin and his team. They're already rearing to go, and we've got a meeting scheduled, I think, next week to brainstorm some ideas. But anywhere and
Okay, that's
everywhere would be
great.
my answer.
Yeah, that's great. Until we see Andy dancing on TikTok. That's where I'm going to draw the line and say, no, we have just gone too far now. All right, that's it. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Gregory.
So thank you. I don't know if I have a lot of questions. They may come out, but I do want to commend you for all of the work that you've done. I think last time when we had kind of a major presentation, a lot of the discussion evolved into what was officer discretion, issues with officer discretion, those types of things. Maybe a feeling that there wasn't a lot of officer discretion or that there had been problems with that in the past. And I think that is certainly all very true. So it seems like you've done a lot of work, though, that is solving that. I heard you talk about a move to professionalize your troops. So from appearance to actions to training, it sounds like you've made great strides in that. And of course, when you have professional troops, part of that is teaching them about proper exercise of discretion. So, and then you spoke about the go-bys and the other things that you've done. And again, that consistency, I think, will go a long ways to the public perception that unfortunately there were many stories in the past in code here where there wasn't a consistency. And so that, again, was an issue with trust in that the discretion of the officers was being properly exercised. So I really perked up when I heard you talking about all those different steps because I know how important, and I'm sure my peers do too, how important that can be to have that professionalism, that consistency, and you can't just expect people to know that. Again, I think that was part of the problem in the past, that some people were exercise good officer discretion, code officer's discretion, and then there were others that were somehow expected to know that, and they didn't for whatever reason. So I commend you for that, and I think that you're going to build a lot better public trust, which is going to bleed over, my feeling would be, into better compliance when people see and have a feeling that it's fair and it's based on it's not based on favoritism, but it's based on fairness. So I think you've gone a long way. The other thing I was really encouraged to hear was the communication piece. We've talked about communication, but you talked about, first of all, the improved feedback. I think that's a huge thing because that was a common complaint, and any of us that had used the app, those types of things, it was a little frustrating to report something and then 5 minutes later get something back that's saying that it was closed. And you're like, well, I just reported something. There's no way that it's closed, but that's kind of what happened. So again, the problem with that is it bled over into, well, people not trusting the app, and we would tell them to use the app, and then they're saying they're frustrated with the app. So I think that feedback is very important. It sounds like you've even are going farther than, you would at least want something that would tell people when it was closed, but it sounds like you're actually taking some intermediate steps, especially the ones that take longer. So I think, again, that's going to build a lot on the public trust. And then, of course, the public education is just a huge piece, because a lot of when you have codes that aren't necessarily enforced or unequally enforced for so long, then, decide to come down and say, okay, we're going to enforce them all. Well, that's very problematic. And again, is that really fair or just to do that, take that harsh step? So I think the education piece is important. So I'm so glad to hear all of the steps that you're taking there.
Sometimes our codes are hard to get through also. So if we can do these videos, and part of the education thing is to break it down to the simplest terms, we want voluntary compliance. We don't want to write citations. We don't want to send that paperwork. We want to educate you, bring you up to speed on what the issue is, and if you can fix it yourself, awesome.
Great. And I know we're going to hear the second part, and I'm hoping we're going to hear some of the same themes in some of the harder areas where we maybe have codes that are hard for people to comply with for a variety of reasons, but mostly because of physical reasons or the way we've allowed building to happen, or not attacks in the future. But for the part that you're working on, it sounds to me like you're really headed in a really great direction. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well said. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll hold my questions and comments until we hear the second part of this presentation, if you don't mind.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. So I'm here to close out the presentation, and this will be a little shorter than Justin's. I want to make sure that I'm giving Deanna ample time to get through her presentation. So I have a couple of final issues that I wanted to share, and really this is agenda setting. We're not here to solve these issues today, but much like we've done with shopping carts and illegal street vendors, we've had very specific discussions diving deep into those topics. I expect that in the coming months, we'll do the same for these subjects, that we'll have continued discussion on vacant and abandoned building registration, on residential parking, and even our mobile home park administration. So we'll come back, we'll have some deeper discussion on these, but I wanted to give you a sense that we're listening, we're hearing council, we're hearing the comments from the community, and that we're taking steps to look at what other communities are doing, look at some potential ideas, look at some potential solutions, and we're coming back to engage with council to really come up with some policy solutions here. So on vacant and abandoned buildings and the idea of a registry, this is not a new idea. In fact, Cathedral City currently has an ordinance that requires the registration of a vacant or abandoned building. It was geared more towards residential properties that were subject to foreclosure during the Great Recession. Really doesn't fit the problems that we're having in the community today, but we do have some steps already in place. And I would say that we don't have to look far. The city of Palm Springs actually has an excellent ordinance. This is an ordinance that I looked at in the last city that I worked in when we were faced with a lot of vacancies in a downtown, really struggling to come up with a tool that put responsibility with the property owner to maintain their structure, to prevent those nuisance conditions that we see with a lot of the abandoned and the vacant properties in Cathedral City. And I'd say that it is a good model for us to take a look at to say, what can we take from that ordinance to place more responsibility on a property owner to maintain their property in a state, in a condition that's preventing those nuisance conditions, that's preventing the unhoused from breaking in, that's preventing a lot of the negative externalities that we see on these properties. So over the course of the next few months, we'll be working to bring that back to City Council to see what changes we can make to our ordinance, perhaps building on what the City of Palm Springs has done and looking to put into place higher expectations for those property owners who have a property that meets that definition of a vacant or abandoned property, placing that responsibility on them, placing a responsibility on them to secure it, to monitor it, and to prevent those nuisance conditions from appearing. There was also some discussion on seasonal occupancy when this was raised with council, and I would suggest that that is a good use of Citizens on Patrol. I've had great working relations with Citizens on Patrol in other communities before who've done home checks, vacation checks for seasonal types of structures. That seemingly is a good opportunity for us to look at. So stepping into the next subject, residential parking. This is a challenge that a lot of communities have as well, and what you do on private property affects the street. So as you regulate parking on private property, if you tighten that down, make it more difficult for someone to park on the property, it has a spillover effect. It doesn't change someone's desire to have vehicles. It doesn't change if you have a multi-vehicle household. It doesn't change how many vehicles they own. If you regulate what happens on private property, they park on the street. That's something that I've seen time and time again in past cities that I've worked in. So our current municipal code notes that vehicles really need to be parked on a cement surface, and in the R1 zoning district, that 50% of the required front or street side yard area can be dedicated to a driveway. So the picture on this slide, this actually is a code enforcement case. You can see a Jeep that's parked on a landscape area. So we did initiate a code case on that. In this case, the property is in an R1 zoning district. It's a 70-foot wide lot with a 20-foot front yard setback. So they have a 1,400 square foot front yard area, and with a 50% max on their driveway, really they can have up to 700 square feet of a parking surface. This particular property already has a 2-car driveway. They have a little bit of concrete to the left of the driveway for access to their side yard. The area in blue really is that additional or incremental parking surface that they could have on this property based on the current regulations. Otherwise, those vehicles would need to be parked on the street. So we're not here today to solve the problem, but we have talked a little bit about a zoning code update that we're looking at. Through that zoning code update, that would be a good opportunity for us to look at more flexible standards, whether we want to consider alternatives to a concrete parking surface, including pavers or permeable pavers. There's other considerations too, ADUs, JADUs. We don't always write the laws. The state has effectively told us that ADUs do not require additional parking when they're located in proximity to transit, and as well, JADUs do not require additional parking. So that changes the demand, and when you have a multi-vehicle household, it does make it more difficult to address parking on site. Spilling over into the street, currently there is nothing that prohibits parking in front of a mailbox. I know that that has been a discussion point with the strategic plan in the past. There are some solutions that we can look at, whether it's time restrictions or curb markings, but there are some downsides to each of those. With time restrictions, you need to put up signs, and it is an enforcement challenge. As Justin has really demonstrated, there's a lot of priorities right now in code compliance. We can do anything, but it is a matter of choosing how we prioritize the resources that we have. Curb markings as well, that is a potential solution, and you can look at this from the standpoint of both a red curb where there is a need for a fire lane designation. Sometimes there is a need for a fire lane designation, and that's a simple solution that we can look at. But looking at curb markings just in front of a mailbox, that can potentially get expensive, and that can be a maintenance problem in the long run. My suggestion here as we start to talk about residential parking and as we come back is for us to have a discussion on what that underlying problem is. And is this a situation where we have competing demands for on-street parking? Is this a case where high school or a trailhead is possibly contributing to that on-street parking situation where we need to manage that? In some communities, I've seen residential parking districts be proposed as a solution. It is an additional burden to those residents, but having that sticker, having that placard that allows them to park on site and perhaps gives us a chance to say, well, who doesn't belong here, and is this someone that's not in the neighborhood that's choosing to park on street? Is that someone that we can enforce against? There are some solutions like that we can look at in terms of how we manage, how we regulate that parking, but it can be a challenge. The last topic for discussion is mobile home park administration and enforcement, and this is one that we have spent quite a bit of time in the last few months really trying to get our hands around. And this affects not only code compliance, but also building. I would say that our team has been doing a very good job responding to complaints as they come from HCD. Right now, HCD fields any complaints that a resident has from a mobile home park. They can receive them through their website, by email, by phone. Those complaints are then sent to Jeremy Frey, our building official, and we investigate and follow up on those complaints. There are some areas, though, where we need to do a better job, and one of those is getting out, doing inspections, and that is going to take additional staff time and additional training. But we are actively working with HCD to get the training that we need to perform the inspections as a local enforcement agency that we accepted. That standard has changed over the years. When the city took on the responsibility to be a local enforcement agency in 1985, there was not a requirement for inspections. That has changed, and it's changed multiple times. Right now, the state HCD has indicated that on an annual basis, they're looking to get out to 5% of the mobile home parks across the state. That doesn't really work in a city like ours, but I think the point is we do need to get out. We do need to look for those health and safety issues that are in our parks, and we do need to support residents and really keep that accountability, make sure that those issues are being addressed. So we are currently working through that. We have issued a letter to the Tramview park owner trying to address some of the issues that have been raised there. And as we step through that, we are going to engage with HCD on an ongoing basis to get the forms, the checklists, and the training we need for code compliance staff and our building inspection staff. And with that, I wanted to close out the presentation, just tie everything together, and Justin and I are available for any additional questions you may have.
Yeah, Andy, I have one. With the residential parking in the streets, motor homes, trucks, they can only stay there 72 hours, I believe, then they have to move. And the owner of the vehicles are pretty clever, so they'll say, move it 4 feet, and say, okay, now I'm locked in for another 72 hours. Is there something that can be added to that ordinance, like 1, 2, 3 violations, and we can fine or tow, something to that effect? Because we have some areas that I've had business owners call me encampments, motorhome, homeless, are actually living in the streets there. And they're pretty wise. They'll just move it a half a block down, and they're tucked in. So is there anything that could be done about that?
I have to reread our ordinance, but there is a difference between the motorhomes and regular passenger vehicles. I believe, and I have to double check on this, but I think motorhomes are only allowed to be on the residential street X amount of days in a 30-day period, whereas the passenger vehicles just has to be moved within 72 hours so they can move it,
Okay.
100 feet up. But a motorhome or a travel trailer, it only gets X amount of days per calendar month anyways. But I'll have to double check on the specifics of that. And if we don't have that language, that's something that we can work with our legal team to include.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Gutierrez?
Thank you. Well, Justin and Andy, first of all, I want to say thank you for all the hard work that you guys do. I know you put up a lot with residents that are angry, wanting to clean up our city, and also council members like myself that get upset that we do not improve any faster when it comes to beautifying our city. But all the work that you guys have done, especially with food vendors, has been incredible. It's working. I get a lot less calls, and actually, a lot of times I find them myself, but there's not as many as there was 3 months ago. So what you guys are doing is working, and thank you for that. Now, in the past, we have talked about, and also thank you for everything that you're doing to simplify and to get rid of redundant forms and coming up with ways that makes it easier for one code officer to take over someone else's case. And it makes it so much easier, and not just to address that issue, but also to take over if it needs to be escalated. It makes it a lot more simple to deal with. Now, in the past, I have talked to our city manager regarding code enforcement on patrol. And all we have to do is get them certified, just like Citizens on Patrol, pay $500, get them certified, and they can help you actually achieve your goals and beautifying our city. They do the same thing as Citizens on Patrol do, but they're code enforcement on patrol. I have had a lot of people, volunteers, wanting to volunteer, but they don't want to be pointers. They don't want to just go out there and put a sticker on them. They want to do something. They want to actually make an impact in our city and help. I know that many cities throughout, for instance, Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage, and Palm Springs, they have a lot more. It's very funny, but how we think. But our mayor here, when he was asking his question about how many code enforcement officers you need, I was actually writing the same question down. Well, I know that we need tons of code enforcement officers to actually achieve what we need to achieve in the city. I don't think we have the budget to do that. But I think that whenever we do have the budget, please let council know that you can always use the help of one or two. But I think you should also keep in mind that and see what can you do with volunteers as code enforcement on patrol volunteers, people that will help out, and it will not cost us a dime. With this, all it will cost us is just a simple fact that the training, which is, from what I heard, is about $500 to take the class and get certified. That's all we need to do. And that will definitely help you beautify our city, and actually free a lot of the time from our code enforcement officers. Now, in the past, also another great comment that was made by Councilmember Gregory here is that I also just recently, about a month ago or so, I was also mentioned that the My Cathedral City app did used to mention closed case, and people used to call me and exactly what Councilmember Gregory said. They were upset that the case was just open. There's no way it was solved because the issue remained. So thank you for actually updating that and to change that. Now, if we can also talk to Ryan to make sure that we push it's no longer called Goal Request, correct? It's called My Cathedral City app?
Correct.
Okay. If we can push that and actually publicize that and Discover Cathedral City and also Facebook and Instagram, whatever we can, because that's very helpful that when residents report that, today I think I reported 2 or 3 items, but it's so handy and easy to actually assist code enforcement by just the simple fact by taking a picture and reporting it to you guys. Now, in the past, I've talked to our city manager regarding a full enforcement of a certain area. That, for instance, you pick a certain area, you get all staff, and you go through them, and you pick, for instance, the 5 things that you talked about, the highest amount of reported code enforcement violations. If we can do that, I'll volunteer my district, and I'll volunteer to go out there with you to go in my district as a tester to see that we are able to actually clean up and to let people know what can be done. But I'm all for working in a certain area and having all staff for 1 or 2 days go through it and see if we can truly make a difference and how we can actually maintain that area. And I'm willing to do that, and if we can just talk to our city manager so we can coordinate that and get it done. We've been talking about it for years, but we haven't done it because of COVID or other things. Staff was slow, so I would love to do that. Now, another thing is that we can also work as a team with every single employee that works in the city that is out in the streets, from public works to police officers to code enforcement to firemen, that whenever they see something, to report it. Every single employee should have My Cathedral City app on their phone, in their city phone. And they should report it, whether it's a buckled sidewalk or bulky item. We should report it. We should work as a team to get the job done. And we talk about it, but immediately it just becomes a conversation and it goes away. But I wish that we can continue to do that and enforce every single employee, Mr. City Manager, to make sure that we test them, to make sure that they do have it. And it's easy to know whether they actually not just download it on their phone, have they reported any cases? We can see whether they reported any cases or not. And I think we can make a dent. For instance, code enforcement, we have a lot of issues, but we've come a long ways. And I can really, since that's one of my main things, as a matter of fact, I ran twice and won from people actually supporting my ideology of beautifying the city. So twice. And so I think the support is pretty high. And I want to make sure that I also live in the city, have lived here for over 40 plus years. And I want to make sure that the city is cleaned up and is one of the most beautiful cities in the entire, not just Coachella Valley, but in the USA. So I'm willing to do whatever you need me to do to help you do that. But of course, I can be your biggest enemy or your biggest alliance to help you out. I'd rather help you than to be on the other side. So anything that I can help you with, please let me know. And I know since you got here, you've done a lot of work. Please let me know how I can help you with that. Okay? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks. I'm going to kind of bullet us through these pretty fast. How many abandoned properties do you think we have in the city, just approximately?
I'd have to do a windshield survey. I don't have the answer to that question.
Send me a text. All right? And then, okay, this is like a stupo question, but I just don't know the answer. Do pavers hold cars?
Yes.
They don't break? I mean, I just dropped a paver and it broke the other day, but
There are pavers designed for that, yes.
for cars, okay. They're not terracotta, they're more maybe a plastic source?
There's different designs,
Okay.
but they are designed for that.
All right, I'll go out and look at those. I know what proximity to transit is, so that was the beginning of my question, and that doesn't really sound like a very good question. What is proximity to transit? But what I meant was, if you look at tight cities, what are they doing? And do we have the opportunity to just spend half an hour one day and looking at what tight cities are doing for their parking and leaving it open for public transit encouragement? So that's kind of a statement more than a question. And how many additional hours per month will you need for mobile home park inspections?
It's unknown at this time. I think we need to understand exactly what the expectation is from HCD in terms of how many are we doing a year, how intensive are these inspections, and who is performing those. So I think right now we're looking at training our code officers as well as our building inspector on those inspections. So
is this something new, or should we have always been doing this and we just kind of dropped that ball a little bit?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then when you do start going out into these mobile home parks in a more robust way, will you or one of your staff members be available for a community meeting?
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, that makes all the difference in the world. 100 voices are so loud and you can squelch them all in one meeting.
As Justin outlined in his presentation, we're all about communication. We're looking for ways to engage with the community in a meaningful way. And as we shift into a different space, if we haven't done inspections before, if we haven't had this relationship with our mobile home parks, that is a good subject for some public outreach and communication.
Thanks, I'll help you in my district as I can. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I also had a follow-up to your original question that you asked me about data ticket, and I apologize for not addressing this sooner. But a citation is not immediate at all. So we utilize technology for translation apps. We have staff on that are paid, that are bilingual, that we can contact anytime we're in the field. And so that citizen, that property owner will have been contacted probably numerous times and educated numerous times prior to ever receiving any citation.
In
So,
their own language.
yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you both.
Thank you. All good questions and all good answers.
I just had a couple. Oh, that's all right. And thank you very much. I just wanted to ask about the abandoned property. My little slide didn't, and I didn't get to read it all. But there are 2 abandoned properties on Date Palm, and our thing is, all roads lead to Cathedral City, and, we've been working steadfastly to really improve Date Palm Drive. So what are the steps in place? And I didn't hear about what can be done with those abandoned properties if they're, what's the explanation of the code there? That's just my not knowing about it.
That's different from what we're talking about abatement of those.
Yeah, are you interested in hearing the, case status and our abatement options for
Right.
those existing
In
properties?
other words, yes, what could we, to take some action, what are the actions being taken to remedy those 2 properties that are abandoned?
So with the abandoned properties, going back several slides to that legal toolbox,
My screen's not working.
let's see, let me go back here. Legal toolbox, we can start with administrative citations.
Okay.
We can go the route of a summary abatement if it's an emergency, or an administrative abatement where we do it through a warrant from the court
right.
where we go in and fix the problem. It's not going to, an administrative warrant in this instance wouldn't fix it not being abandoned anymore. It would be more of the board up if that hasn't taken place. But really, you would have to jump down into the civil enforcement and potentially getting a receivership to get those buildings back to the standard.
I understand. Okay. And then the second question had to do with the curbs. There's the roll curb, and then there's the 90-degree curb. So what creates a situation where you have one or the other? Because oftentimes we have a roll curb and they just drive up on their front lawn. But I can also see the point that if it's a 90-degree curb, and they have to park in the street, that the streets, especially where I live in the Cove, some of the streets are very, very narrow. So when people are coming down and people are parked in the street, we kind of give each other the high sign and let one car go and the other. So I don't know if that determines how it's done originally.
So
That's a big, long
city's
question.
engineering standards would determine whether a
Okay.
vertical curb or a rolled curb is
Okay.
installed, and I would defer that question to John Corella.
Okay,
if
I'll
you're
talk
interested
to
in
John
that.
later. We don't have to, thank you. I just
I
wondered.
believe Councilman Gutierrez has another question.
Yes, I have a question for you, Justin. Now, is Data Ticket, is that the same company that Rancho Mirage is contracted with?
I believe so. They are pretty industry standard.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I believe council has asked some great questions, and they got all the answers. Gentlemen, thank you for that presentation. It was very enlightening and informative. And who's next? Is Deanna coming up?
I think Deanna's next, and we'll be back.
Here we go.
And Mayor Carnevale, just to let you know, I did not receive any request to speak forms, but I'd like to ask one time if we have any public
Okay.
comments.
Thank
If you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on this item, please raise your hand. And I see none, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, item C, and that was for presentation only and discussion direction. There's no formal action required. Now, the annual rate increase request for solid waste and recycling collection for residential, commercial, and roll-off services. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is also just a study session item tonight. You're not required to act on this. It has been posted through the legally required process and will be on your agenda for action on May 22nd. Deanna Pressgrove is here to go over the proposed changes to the rate structure for solid waste collection and disposal in Cathedral City, and I know Representative Simbertek are here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Good
Hello,
afternoon,
Deanna.
Mayor.
Hello, Deanna, welcome.
Welcome.
Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here to go over the review of the proposed rate increase that will affect our collection service for residential, commercial, and roll-off accounts. So the rate increase incorporates 3 factors: the net annual recycling adjustment, the County of Riverside's recent decision to increase the tonnage disposal at their landfill. They're currently at $59.70 per ton, and they have approved an increase which is effective July 1st at $64.48 per ton. The proposed rate increase also incorporates the CPI increase, and I do have to point out an error in my staff report. The CPI increase says that it's based off the Riverside County. It's actually based off of the trash, sewer, and water collection CPI, which if you look at your attachment to the staff report, Burtek's request, they do clearly state that it's based off of trash, sewer, and water. The Riverside County was my mistake when I inputted it. But the CPI increase for water, sewer, and trash collection for this last year was 5.55%. The max that you can request for a CPI increase on trash collection is 5%. So the rate increase does reflect a 5% CPI increase. So how does this affect our customers? Commercial first. Our normal service for commercial customers is a 3-yard serviced once a week for most of our commercial customers, and the increase, if approved, would be effective July 1st, 2024, and would affect our customers $12.21 per month. And you'll see here on my PowerPoint that I've given you the 2-yard, 3-yard, 4-yard, and 6-yard comparison, but again, 3-yard container service once a week is our standard for Cathedral City commercial customers. Our residential customers, so their current rate, well, the increase, if approved, would be effective on their property tax bill. So commercial customers would see the increase if approved on July 1st. Our residential customers would not see the increase until their property tax bill came out for calendar year January through December 2025. And they would see an increase of $2.49 per month, or $29.88 annually. So the monthly rate for 2025 would be $30.80. A residential rate comparison, if approved, we would be at $30.80. The current rates for Coachella, Riverside County, and Palm Springs, so they will be doing their rate increases coming up, but these are their current rates. This gives you a comparison. Just so you know, we're not apples to apples with any of these jurisdictions. What we offer our customers, in my opinion, way exceeds what other jurisdictions get. Bang for the buck. So what do they get for that rate? They get the curbside collection. Commercial customers get their bins picked up each week. Our residential customers, they get 196-gallon trash, recycling, and organics container. Also additional free. They get their recycling and their organics at no additional charge. This year, they also get a kitchen pail for free, and they get liners. And they go through Public Works, and I'm going to tell you, they love them. They are constantly sending in requests for liners. We give them a box. It's $100 a box. I'm not going to do this like I'll give you 20 or 30. I just give you a box.
And that's
it's
nice.
easy.
Those are nice.
Yeah, well, and it's
hard to keep in, but they're nice.
and it's much more efficient for us, Luis, who helps me, to just put a label on it and get it off instead of counting and doing separate envelopes. So it makes it really efficient. Bulky item collection, very popular, is residential and commercial and multifamily get 4 items per week. So residents get 4, multifamily gets 4, commercial gets 4. And commercial, how positive this is for them is normally theirs is a result of illegal dumping next to their trash enclosure. So it's not bulky items they have generated through renovations of their businesses. It's almost always illegal dumping. And in our neighboring cities, if that happens to them, that's a responsibility of the property owner to get it hauled away, or they have to call Burtek and pay a fee. Our customers get it, they can call it in for free. We also have special services for our disabled. If you have a placard, you are able to get backyard service at no additional charge. Backyard service means that we will come, Burtec will come and pull your cart to the curb and put it back for you. Our STVRs are also mandated to have that service so that we get the carts pulled up and back for people that don't live here. We also do holiday Christmas tree recycling and multifamily and commercial recycling programs. And this multifamily one is, we've started this about 15 years ago, and it's really helped us with some of our issues outside of multifamily. So multifamily can see a lot of turnover, and they'll leave in the middle of the night, and then they'll leave just trash everywhere. And they may not leave it like at Terracina inside next to the trash enclosure, because then they risk being fined or cited or losing their deposit from the apartment complex. What they'll do is go out on Converse and leave it on the street. So to counter that, what we did is we developed a bulky item program for multi-family complexes. And what we do, working with Burtec, is that we put up this, what you see right here is a sign, and it's a big aluminum sign. And we put them at every trash enclosure. We work with Burtec. Burtec tells us what's at each trash enclosure. We do these signs. It's in English and Spanish. We even do the color of the bins, the style of the organics, and we put, if you can see it at the very bottom, trash enclosure number 5 is for your large bulky item pickups. And I have just found over the years that these signs have become instrumental in helping us with contamination, but also making sure the resident knows simply, okay, I can do this. This is where I put trash. This is where I put recycling. And we've added the last couple of years, we've started numbering the trash enclosures, because if I get a call saying, so-and-so, this is not working, this is happening, sometimes, well, then Burtec says, what trash enclosure are you talking about? So now we've done numbers. So it makes it easier on the management companies to contact and for us to resolve issues. So it's been a good program. It's something, though, multifamily, we just have to stay on top of indefinitely. We also do our SB 1383 on-site waste and recycling audits that Burtec performs. The fund also supports the scrap gallery programs, our garden and composting programs. As a reminder, we have garden programs at most of our elementary middle schools, plus we also have it at our senior center and our 55 Boys and Girls Club, and a few of our 55 and older communities. And as part of SB 1383, we're going to be taking those up a notch in the near future to really focus on edible food recovery programs in addition to garden programs at our communities. And then our very popular and very simple community shredding events that are October through May. We just had our last one for the season. We will be back in October, although everybody that shows up in May acts like we're never coming back. They're just like, so it's so intense. But we do come back. They did all a great job this year, and we'll be back in October. We also offer shredding, so we cover the charge for the shredding service at our 55 and older communities. Because over the years of doing the shredding program, we learned that our seniors had a hard time getting to the community event, whether they couldn't get the items in the car or just had a hard time getting that to us on a Saturday morning. So what we did is we put carts out at each of the 55 and older communities, including the senior center, and we pay for that service. So that seniors don't have to come to us. They can just shred right there where they live. What's going on? Where are we at? There we go. And then our next popular event, which after all these years of doing the weekly Tuesday event from 1 to 2:30 at the Public Works Yard, where we collect unwanted medications, sharps, electronics, tires, and batteries, you would think after 15 years we would not have much of a turnout. And that is just not the case. Every week it's just constant. Truckloads of tires. We collect batteries, so they bring the batteries in. And they love the sharps and the unwanted medication, because you bring in your needles in your containers, and then we'll give you an empty one, and then you can bring it back. And there's no charge for any of this. And then our next popular program is our community outreach, which is our mailer. And the mailer includes all of our environmental programs, including your community events. We get those in there. And then we also get code compliance tips within that mailer as well. In addition to this mailer, we do work with code compliance when they see an area that's struggling that's, whether they're not getting it, we'll do direct mail pieces for just that area. We won't send out this guide, we'll send out a specific mailer that just focuses on whether it's bulky items, carts at the curb, graffiti. We always, this guide and every guide that we send out has my information on my Cathedral City app and how to use it. So we do that. And then additional programs, we have the reusable tote bags, the Water Smart Landscape Grant Program, which, as you are aware, we increased that to $1,000 a resident. We also allowed multifamily to participate. I've had one so far, so they processed their invoice and were paid $20,000 for their community's renovation, so that was good. Then we have our monthly residential street sweeping program, the illegal dumping collection program, and then our senior and low-income assistant cleanup programs, and this is where we also work with code compliance on identifying those in need, where they will provide the labor to clean up their property, we will provide the roll-off, and we will do the empty and returns at no charge to the customer so that we can help them get cleaned up. So, summary, residential customers, their current rate for calendar year 2024 is $28.31. If approved at the May 22nd meeting, the residential rate would increase to $30.80. We did send out a Prop 218 notice on April 8th, and to date we have received 8 residential protests. And that Prop 218 was mailed out to all businesses and all residential customers. And as part of our 5-year strategic plan, this falls under Goal D for innovation. And that summarizes my presentation. We're presenting to you for any questions or any clarification today, discussion and comments. And we will be back for a public hearing and city council approval at the May 22nd, 24 city council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I just have, throwing you a softball here, girl. So of all of these things that you're offering, all of the pickups and deliveries and sharps and garbage, what does that cost a resident to come get that from you or to order that service?
Nothing.
Nothing is a very good price. I mean, how many things, I mean, really, honestly,
Yeah.
how many things do you get that are valuable to you that are free? I only have one personal thing that I'm going to add, and then I think in every box of those fillers, refill, we should have like a little rubber band, like a kind of a bigger one, because they fall in all the time. As soon as they get too much garbage in there, it
You mean
falls
the
in.
kitchen pail? Mm-hmm. Oh, I like
I
that.
just need a big rubber band.
Yeah, that could go over it.
That's right. So you
with
can put it, because it goes
Cathedral
over
City
all except
logo?
the back, you know, and then
Oh,
that
I like
falls
it.
in there.
I like it.
All right, well,
We'll
think
do
about it.
Yeah, we can send it out with the liners.
That's right.
There you go.
I could find some money for that.
Oh,
Thank
there you go. I even like that better.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb?
Right, I just wanted to say thank you for all your great work on every issue, but the shredding event has just been terrific. And I did get out there just at the last 10
I
minutes.
saw you taking pictures, yes.
Yes, but it was wonderful, and I just wanted to, I have an anecdotal story. I have a girlfriend that lives in Montage, and she's nerdy like I am, and she gets her little booklet and, you know, does the highlighter and puts the tabs on those services that she thinks she's going to need. And so she's been married and divorced twice, and she got rid of her last, all the paperwork, and took it down this Saturday.
I thought you were going to tell me we shredded the husband. the
Well, no,
ex-husband.
no,
we
no.
didn't? Okay.
No, nothing.
I
You
like,
do
okay.
that? Nothing
Is that a
like that, but
possibility?
This was her feel-good story with her booklet. And my question to her was, how did you find out about this service? And she said she just likes that
mailer.
uses that mailer. So it's, it's such a great service. And the array of services. And when Justin was talking about the different things that come up with code, that, and Mayor Pro Tem was talking too about the kinds of workshops that might be available to residents, because as they become more accustomed and aware of what services we provide, they're going to take advantage of it, and as a result, our city is going to be even more beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregory? You're welcome.
So thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you to Frank and your crew there for all that you do. And you of course, have continued on with some great additions that I think that, and you highlighted all of them, that to me are significant. One, of course, is the extra green and organics container. I think that continues to be logical to me if we want to promote the separation and separate collection of organics, that we make sure that there's adequate ability to do that and don't have an additional cost for people that want to do that in earnest. So I thank you for continuing that program, and along with that, the Christmas tree program is kind of also related to that. And you kind of hit on it really quickly, but another thing I think that was a great change here in our city was the ability for Burtec on their own, or through being reported, to come in and pick up trash being dumped on vacant lots and those types of things, instead of trying to go through the process and find the property owners or have the property owners take care of it, which arguably they may, I know other council doesn't necessarily agree with that, but they may actually be the victims if they have vacant property. They probably aren't dumping trash on their own property. So it seems like they would really handle the problem, and I know that Burtec has added that at a very reasonable cost and continues to keep that cost very reasonable. So I think that is also a great addition, and it sometimes gets lost in there. So that's what I have about Burtec. Thank you so much. But while you're talking about all your different services, it did remind me that I know we were looking at different ways to try to improve the ability of residents to do CRV redemption.
Yes.
And because, we used to have a number more sites where that could happen. And I know Burtec still has a process that you can redeem your CRVs, or you can always put them in the blue container, and Burtec will sort those out, and I'm sure that helps cover the bottom line. But there are not many places where residents that want to cash those in themselves can do that, and I know you had some programs. I was just wondering, while you're here with us, if you had an update on any of those?
No, not yet, but I'm hoping with this next fiscal year and with the addition of Luis to my team that we'll be able to tackle. I am really interested in a mobile program.
Yes.
Up north, or Oregon had one in place, so I'm really hoping that I'll be able to present something for that for you guys, versus going back to the facilities that were in the parking lots of the Stater Brothers, which also caused their own issues.
Yes.
I think maybe the mobile one might be something that would benefit our residents if we could go to them.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm hoping this next fiscal year I'll be able to present an outstanding, award-winning program for you to.
Well, that would be great. I know that from the state side of charging, that they now added other bottles on that weren't there before. So it seems like the program isn't waning on the state side. So I'm happy that you're continuing to try to find a more practical solution for our residents.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deanna.
You're welcome.
I see Frank or Clara. Would you like to come up and say any few words? You're all good? Any public comments?
Mayor, I did not receive any request to speak forms for this item, but if you're a member of the public and you wish to comment on item 3C, please raise your hand. And I see none, Mayor.
Okay, this is for presentation only, for discussion, direction only. There's no formal action required. We'll recess till 5:30. Thank you.